How many yards will the Noles get against the Tigers? How many points will they score? And ultimately, will it be enough to win?
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back into another episode of Locked On Seminoles. I am your host, Brian Smith, and today we're going to have some fun talking offense. But first, thank you very much for making this your first listen each and every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the awesome Locked On Network, your team every day. As I said, we are going to talk some offense going against a great opponent, but we're going to talk passing game, situational, third downs, big plays, chunk yardage, short yardage, a little bit of everything. Wide receivers, which running back, which tight end, you name it. We're going to talk a little bit of all of that today on Locked On Seminoles. It's going to be fun. And keep in mind, going against LSU, the circumstances get broader because you got to be more specific. So we're going to have a lot of fun today. First off, today, FanDuel. This is our sponsor of the day. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more right now. New customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com, Locked On, to get started. So today we're looking at a situation where last season, that was a weird game, 24-23. Florida State wins down in New Orleans. I expect this game just right off the bat, it's going to be a little more exciting, a little more consistent. Both teams have a quarterback from last year that's back this year, going through a whole year, then another spring. We're going to have offense in general. I'm not going to talk so much about Jaden Daniels today, just more about Florida State. But the predictions I'm going to talk about, backed up with stats, a little conjecture, it's more fun because we're to game week. We're getting close to the point where it's not just, the game's down the line, what we need to work on. It's flat out game preparation, the last few days of pads before you start walkthroughs and traveling down to Orlando to play the LSU Tigers. Florida State has the offensive firepower. They have the experience, all those things. But how will it translate in game one on September 3rd in Orlando? So first segment, got to start with the quarterback, right? Jordan Travis. Heisman hopeful. Played pretty well against LSU last year, at least in spurts. Statistically, didn't do too bad. We'll get into that in a second. But the key point here in segment one, and I want to bring this right out the bat before I even get into the stats, I expect him to be more dynamic in the run game this year than he was last year, even though in some ways you could argue LSU's front seven will be better. We'll talk a little bit about that too. I just want to make one prediction, then I'll explain why in a moment. But here are the stats last year for Travis as he went up against LSU. As I mentioned, LSU did a nice job of bottling him up. Sacks count against run totals and things of that nature, but 8 carries for 31 yards is not scaring anybody. He basically averaged 4 yards a carry. Now, passing the football, Travis was somewhat efficient. He was a little over 60%. He was 20 out of 33, 60.6. It's okay. 260 yards and 2 touchdowns. I like both those stats. But here's the one that needs to go up if you're going to be consistent against teams, and especially if Jaden Daniels plays as well as he probably should. Again, second year in the system, he's going to take a step up too. 7.9 yards per pass last year against the Bayou Bengals. It's pretty pedestrian for a player as talented as Jordan Travis. Now, give LSU credit. By all means, LSU deserves credit. They did a nice job last year keeping plays in front of them. But there were just some awkward moments for both teams offensively. I'll just throw both of them under the bus. They got in their own way a few times. Play calling maybe on a play here or there, a drop, a missed block, a false start, field position with special teams. You name it, both teams found little things here and there to shoot themselves in the foot. The game ended up in the low to mid-20s. It very easily could have been mid-30s to even 40 for one of them if they just would have executed. Now, woulda, coulda, shoulda. First game of the year, new quarterbacks. There was a lot of things, but for both teams again, and I know I'm going to talk about Travis, but both teams should be able to convert more 3rd and 4, 3rd and 6s this year. There's no excuses. So let's start with Travis on that. Run game. The run pass option game is big for many teams, and Florida State in particular has the nuances and the fits to make that happen. Obviously, you're going to throw the ball down the field to Johnny at some point, but he can catch a screen. He can be an H-back. He can be a guy that comes across and kicks out. Benson gets a nice run off tackle, whatever. He's a very versatile guy. I'm curious to see how some of the players off the bench, I'm not even going to remotely predict which player or players from the Noles come off the bench at receiver. They got some depth in terms of talent, but they got to prove it in big games again this year. It all starts at 0. So they do have talent. We've heard a lot about them through different reports, what's been seen in practices, etc. But do you really think there's one guy? I don't. I think it'll be 3 or 4 different players that'll get on the field. I know that I'm pretty high on Destin Hill, and I continue to be, but I think he'll be one of. Is it going to be Kentron or somebody else? I don't know. They'll figure it out, and the guys will rotate in accordingly. The one I'm most interested in for Jordan Travis to hook up with, though, and I'll get a little bit more into it in segment 2, but is Winston Wright? Because I don't think schematically you got to pick and choose no matter who you're playing and no matter the level. LSU is going to have a difficult time not shading towards Johnny because he's just so big. If you put one-on-one with him at, let's say, a 6-foot corner, that's a pretty decent sized corner, but Johnny's over 6'5". He's listed at 6'7". Let's just say he's 6'5". That would still be a 5-inch difference. That's a big deal. And he's a long-arm kid that can really run. He averaged nearly 21 yards per reception during the 2022 Florida State season. That's an incredible number at the major Power 5 level. So if they're going to do that, and you've got guys like Benson, you've got, maybe I'm just biased because I saw him in high school. You got Toafili, etc. I think the RPO game, all of those different moving parts, jet motions, reverses, sweeps, play action, power run game, traditional, they might get under center, they might not. Outside zone, Florida State's really good at that. The conglomerate that Florida State created over the last few years should create a couple of big plays. Now, here's what Florida State did last year in the run game. They averaged 3.5 yards a carry. That's okay, but I think they should be better this year. And I'll talk a little more about it. But again, it's the chemistry of being in year 2 with Travis that he's confident. Not that he's played more than 2 years as a starter, but I mean, last year it clicked. Once they got to about the Georgia Tech game, it just went boom. And he was like the Miami game, he averaged like 14 plus yards a pass. It's insane. He figured it out, the little nuances with how to carry out a play action fake, when to audible, when to slide a protection. All the things that are not statistical that I can't read had to have happened in some way, or they wouldn't have been that efficient and that explosive. Another offseason conditioning and all that, but most importantly, another spring practice. Refine, reps. I think the RPO game is going to create a few more big plays. And I don't necessarily think he'll throw for more than 260. He could, but I think it'll be more efficient. Again, 7.9 yards per pass. It's okay. I expect that to be closer to 8.5, 8.7 by the end of this game. 8's kind of like the bottom end of where you want to be in a game at the major Power 5 level. But at the same time, it's not an end-all be-all. If you're clutching on 3rd downs, that's final segment, you can kind of make up for it too, or 4th downs, as it might be. You might see Florida State go for a few 4th downs. So I think in the passing game, 250 to 275 is similar. Kind of the bottom end, I think 275 to 300 is top end. I'm going to guess 275 is the number. So slightly higher. But I also think last year he was 20 at 33. I think it'll be a few less attempts because he'll be more efficient. It'll be 22 or like 29. I think he'll have a really high number with the screen game, a little more efficient with some bombs and or fades near the end zone. Just a few more completions equals a few less attempts that are needed. And that's key. If he can do that, especially early in the game, if he comes out and you set a tone, that helps your defense too. Then you can make sure that you get to dictate when you just want to hand it off to Benson or Toafili or whatever. I'm really interested with Rodney Hill. That's my X factor that I don't really have an interest of guessing too much on. I just know he's talented. I need to see him play significant reps. We'll see. But any one of those three, they have talent. And if they can dictate and kind of wear LSU down with a balanced attack early in the game, especially Travis being efficient, maybe he escapes the pocket on a play. They should have got a sack. Who knows? That's the key. They've got to get early points. They got to be consistent. And they quite honestly just need to be efficient. I think they will be. But LSU, don't discount them now. That is a talented defense. So keep in mind, we're not playing some chump team. A lot of teams, they're going out there and playing something Southern State. This is LSU. That is not something to sneeze at. And you need to respect it. So I expect Jordan Travis to be good, but at the same time, this is a quality opponent. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Ever had a time when you would like to have had somebody to talk to about an issue you had with maybe your relationship, your job, something that's going on with your kids' work, your kids' school, something similar to that? Therapy helps you stay connected to what you really want while navigating life. If you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. Let therapy be your map with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnCollege today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnCollege. Segment 2 here. This is about the run game, and that's why I started mentioning at the end of segment 1. If you're going to run the football to set up the pass, that's fine. That's the traditional way to do it. But I think Florida State's going to do a little bit of balance because they've got a veteran QB, obviously, in Jordan Travis, and try to take some shots and mix in the run game and really try to keep LSU off balance. With or without Mason Smith, that's a very talented team. There are a half dozen guys conservatively that are in the 2 deep that will, in some capacity, one day go to an NFL training camp, make a team, whatever, from LSU's defense. That's a pretty safe bet. That doesn't mean that Florida State can't move the ball. They did last year, but they're going to have to be balanced. And again, I'm going to go back to this first point I made. Getting off quick with Jordan throwing the football early in the game could really be a big deal because LSU's probably going to try and bring some heat, do some different things to confuse him a little bit, something they didn't show last year. I mean, you might as well. You can't just run cover 3 against him. He'll pick you apart. They're going to mix it up. Show one look, cover 2, then they're going to drop the rabbit in the hole or the rat in the hole, as Saban likes to say. Safety comes down, go to single high, move parts around, fire zone, you name it. They're going to try to do different things. The reason for it is, even if we get burned, that's okay because we're trying to get negative plays and or turnovers. It's kind of a theme from talking to coaches. This is, just my own synopsis. Talking to coaches around high school, college football, everybody has a slot or a quarterback or whatever. It's just super dominant. You're not going to stop, especially in combination. You got to get negatives. If they can beat LSU over the top or just, long run, maybe Jordan busts through and breaks 2 tackles and goes 75 yards. Anything's possible. If they can do that early and take the wind out of LSU sails as far as their defense goes, it would really go a long way for this point. I think, and as I put up here on the sidebar, if you're watching on YouTube, my second segment says FSU run game, 3 running backs, ? I think Trey is kind of obvious. Rodney Hill, Lawrance, Toafili, those are really good running backs too. How deep will they go? And of course, that doesn't even count Jordan. I just wanted to specify running backs. They could go further than that, but those are 3 darn good backs. Which one gets hot, or do they just rotate him? Mike Norvell has shown that he will rotate running backs against quality competition. He's done it since he's been with the Noles. He did it before when he's at Memphis. He likes to rotate backs. They can't average what they did last year, though. They averaged 3.5 yards a carry. That's not going to get it. My 3 keys that I have: be able to run the ball between the tackles. I don't care if Jordan's in pistol, shotgun, under center. They're in the T formation with 3 backs, single. If they're an empty and he's running shotgun draw, whatever it is, by the end of the first half, at minimum, they need to average 4 yards a carry between the tackles. Now, outside runs, they should average more. There's just more chances because if you make one guy miss, you can get 20 yards a lot of times. It's why teams try to get to the perimeter. It's not any newsflash. But if you can bludgeon the team physically, that also impacts the mind, by running power football. That changes a ball game in numerous ways. For anybody out there that played offensive line, and I'm sure there are some of you, there is nothing like imposing your will against another man and moving him off his spot. End of story. Running backs, they know it when the offensive line is feeling it. Running backs know it when they have opposing D linemen and front 7 members in general on their heels. If you can just get a few of those, and I'm not saying they're just going to run over LSU, by the way, that's not very likely. But if they can just consistently do that and get like 4 to 6 yards on first downs with traditional power runs, again, this is all about the generic stuff that people don't like to hear about, but it's the difference between winning and losing. I would rather win. If you can do that, then RPO, then play action, and then Jordan's legs just in general, whether a pass and he decides to take off, draws, designed runs, a bootleg, nothing's there. I'll pick up 3 or 4. It's better than a sack. All those things become easier. This all works together. If you cannot bang that drum and create holes, it's a heck of a lot harder to throw the ball or have other types of actions that LSU's knows is going to come from FSU's offense, especially that outside running game, which is really good for Florida State. If they can start widening out, the DNs not respect the inside game and they're just rushing up the field because it's passing, no good, brother. Have to be able to run between the tackles. LSU is too fast to just run outside. Even with the Noles speed, must be able to run the ball between the tackles. I know that's as boring as it gets, but that's the thing here. The other thing, 4.0 is like minimum onside runs. I want to see at least 2 runs. I don't care where they come from running backs that are 25, 30-yard runs or more. Just earn it. Just straight up earn it. If Jordan gets something else, that's great. Because I think there's going to be some stuffs, and LSU's going to make some plays. They'll have a few negatives, etc. Cannot give up on the run game early, even if they're averaging 2.5, 3 yards a carry. It is a long game. Patience, patience, patience. 2.5 to 3 yards in the first quarter and a half becomes 3 to 3.5. Then it's 3.5 to 4.5, somewhere in like that by the early third quarter at worst. In the fourth quarter, you should average 5+. They have over 200 career starts amongst the guys competing for playing time in practice. I mean, it's ridiculous. They should be able to hit a few big runs here. And then the final thing, like short yardage, just going to say it. 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2, they should be able to pick what they want to do, depending on, overloads and things of that nature that LSU shows, and be effective. I don't think that's too much to ask, especially with the legs of Jordan Travis. Why would you not be able to? It's just relevant to say at some point he's going to take off and make a play. If Jordan Travis makes just a couple of those, it may be the difference between winning and losing, because if he can get a couple extra first downs on those, and that's part of the rushing total, and they can get to 145, 150. Last year, they did okay running the ball. We see what they run for last year. It wasn't incredible, but at the same time, it was solid. I think they averaged 3.5, but they should average more this year, in my opinion. Yeah, last year, rushing attempts, 3.5 yards a carry, 132 yards, 38. I think 4.2, 4.3 is a pretty conservative number because, again, the continuity and the experience up front and what we're perceiving, again, that's why I mentioned 3 running backs. If Hill and Toafili are as good as we think and they can complement Benson, you're going to have to grind out runs. Harold Perkins is not going to be friendly. He's going to line up all over the place. He's about as dynamic as it gets. If you can get to that number, especially if you can average that in the first half, second half's a little easier, Florida State should be in pretty good shape. I think that's what I would go with. Now, if you want to talk about the final piece, I think that the play action will be the key. And that's what we're going to get into in the third segment. Get ready for NFL season with incredible offers from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $500 and $200 in bonus bets. $5 and $200 for $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Plus, all customers who bet $5 will get $100 off NFL Sunday Ticket. That's pretty cool. From YouTube and YouTube TV. Now is the best time to join FanDuel. The app is easy to use, and you can be on everything from spreads to your player props and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season with an offer you don't want to miss. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Let's talk a little bit about play action, big plays, situational football here in segment 3. This is my favorite thing because I like to get tucky. If we're not talking about recruiting is my favorite. But as far as games, stats, it's situational football. You hear it all the time, right? NFL Network, Fox, NBC, ESPN, whatever you watch. What did you hit on third downs? Stuff like that. Last year, Florida State was rock solid on third downs, but still only scored 24 points. That's why they found ways to shoot themselves in the foot, and so did LSU for that matter. Top of your head, what do you think? 2022 Florida State LSU, what do you think the Noles hit on third downs and they scored 24? But that number, I would guess 4 of 11, 4 of 13, something like that. They were 11 of 17. With that number, you should be 38 points. I mean, that's pretty consistent. With their talent, you figure you get a few more first downs, eventually somebody's going to make a defender miss and they're going to score. Just kind of how it works. Law of averages, right? Didn't happen last year. They need to be more efficient when they get those first downs, especially the first down of a drive. Okay, we're in sync. Here we go. Now let's attack. Florida State much more efficient this year, you would think. That being stated, FSU's wide receivers in the situational stuff, this is why I left it for third segment. I expect them to be big. I think Winston, Wright, and Coleman, about 15 catches would be great between the three. 10, I think, is minimum. 12 is probably about what's going to happen. But it's going to be the other guys that are going to be key off the bench. We've talked about it before, Dustin Hill, etc. That'll take care of itself. But I've had a few people reach out to me via email and all that, talking about, Brian, you're not giving enough credit to the tight ends. Okay. Maybe I'm not. But I think those 3 receivers, you're going to focus on them. And I think they're going to screen it some too. Maybe it's Hill or somebody else. I don't know how that's going to work. You need to find ways for those running backs to get the ball in space. Toafili is my pick to click with not a lot of touches. I think he's going to have a big play, just gut feeling. But I also think that any one of the 3 running backs could, because they're all just flat out talented players. So Trey Benson, do we think he gets the ball 2 or 3 times on screens? He wasn't a big receiver last year in terms of volume. Or is it just they try to get him in a situation that makes it as natural as possible that it's like a run again? I don't know how much he's improved in the pass game. That's in his head. That's what Norvell and his staff get paid a lot of money to figure out. But somebody has to be able to be consistent in pass protection and helping Jordan Travis to make sure that all 3 of Johnny Wilson, Winston Wright, and Keon Coleman, when they run routes and they do win a battle, that Jordan Travis can set his feet, step into his throw, and make it happen. That's carrying out fakes. That's blocking. That's being good in the screen game to make the defense think first. When defenses think, it's paralysis by analysis. That's never really going to change. Play actions, whatever. Efficiency. Again, I keep saying that. Against the quality defense, if you're sloppy with little things like a play action fake, that's a sack. If you're sloppy with the play action fake, defensive lineman knows I can't get to the quarterback, stops, sets his feet, jumps up, tips the ball up, interception for a linebacker, pick six. Little details. It's the difference between winning and losing, folks. Does Florida State carry it out? Because if they do, those numbers, like I said earlier, just as an example, I expect about 275 for Travis, give or take. Could become 315 or something like that because it can be just one play. 2 inches, 3 inches is the difference between 2nd and 10 or a 55-yard touchdown to Keon Coleman. It's why it's always been, and it's why college football is fascinating. So with that, the tight ends. I think Jaheim Bell's a really talented player. The kid I'm curious about is Douglas. He's a monster. He's 280 plus. Morlock's another athlete. How much he's going to play in situationally, I don't know. And I'm going to kind of wrap it up on this. Situational football, to me, 3rd down and short, even 2nd and long, whatever it is. You can go 12 personnel and still run spread, especially when you got a running quarterback like Jordan Travis. I'm curious to see what Norvell and his staff come up with for all the tight ends. How much H-back, how much motion, how much shift they're comfortable with putting in, because I know they're going to want to, because coaches want to be techie. They can lie all they want. They want to be techie and look cool, but that's more chances for penalties and goof ups. Last year, Lord only knows, both the teams shot themselves in the foot with that stuff. Can they just be efficient and run a handful of formations and beat LSU? I don't know. But the more efficient team with all the little things, you're basically running the same play here. It's something that copies from the NFL to college and team to team at both levels. You want to run the same play, but out of 6 formations and them not know it. You'll hear in off-the-record conversations, college and pro coach talk about this stuff all the time. You want your players to be comfortable and them to be clueless. That's it. But there's still a chance. It only takes one guy. He's running his parallel. He steps forward, illegal procedure, false start, whatever it is. One player is off the line. You only got 6 guys on the line of scrimmage. You miss on a 30-yard play. Something like that. Efficiency, especially in those 3rd down and 1s. You see a team 3rd and 1 from the 2-yard line. Hey, if we don't score here, we'll get the first, we'll score. Guy jumps off. False start. Now it's 3rd and 6 from the 7. That kind of play can lose you a football game. Florida State can't be the team that does that. Can't be that team. So all of this aside, I still think there's a chance that the game comes down to one thing, and that's a bomb or a fade ball. It could be for either team. Malik Neighbors for LSU could certainly be that guy. I think Keon Coleman will be the key player in the 4th quarter because I think, again, I mentioned this earlier, if I'm LSU and I'm going to play double coverage on a given play, I'm going to try to take the 6'7" guy out of the game. Call me crazy. Maybe I am. But I'm going to do that. Keon Coleman's another big guy, but you can't double them both. It's not going to work against Florida State. So they're going to have to do something with him, and maybe it could be still at the same time, could be a running back out in the slot or whatever, or it could be a lot of different things. It could be one of the tight ends. Maybe it's Douglas running across the formation. It's free in the flat, whatever. They got to be efficient in the red zone. With that, thank you folks very much for listening in today. I truly appreciate it. It's a lot of fun, and this podcast is just kind of getting going. I know there's a lot of things that you could probably be doing besides this, and just want to say I appreciate the everydayers. We're going to get rolling again every week, talking about previews, points, and stuff like that, early to midweek, defense, what we need to do, and at the end of the week, we'll have predictions. Today's offense will start a little bit more defense, some game time stuff, maybe some injury news at the end of the week if we can. So everybody be safe, and thank you for checking into Locked On Seminoles. I love this This is a lot of fun, man. This is a lot of fun. So everybody have a great day. Thank you much.